That's a gewaltig introduction. Then Mrs. I didn't know till they called me from America and said, you got a bracha? Father Sheva bracha? They called already from America, they knew. So it was like, apparently it was choshev. So we have a serious nicer for tonight. It would be nice if it was light and easy, but it's not. And it's a serious conversation we're going to have. People had sent in some questions. We divided up some of the questions. I hope to cover them agav in my comments tonight. But it's chinuch habonim, and for all of us working with our children in this day and age, I think everyone is aware, is a challenge. I look at my children bringing up their children today, and it's a different world, an utterly different world than the world in which we brought up our children. And today they say, you know, they used to say that a door changes every 5 years. I think it's about every 6 months now. It's just incredible how fast things are changing and the tchum and the world of our children. So we have to think more openly and more realistically and go back to the basics of chinuch. What's shocking to me is how many of us get married with very, very little yediyah about how to actually bring up our kids. Most of us, the best we ever had was the commitment to not do what our parents did. And that doesn't last very long when you get stressed out, because that's what you do. But the lack of real yediyah in this world, that's changing. It's astonishing to me. That's I guess the good side of technology, the good use of it. I go everywhere. I came here tonight, and people tell me they're watching drushes constantly and chazering. It's heartwarming that we have an olam today that wants to understand and really, really be honest about what we're facing. There's a Gemara in Nida. Gemara says, Nida Tesayin on the base. The Gemara says, Amalach hamamuna al ha'hirayan Laila Shmoi. There's a malach in charge of pregnancy. His name is Laila. Noitel tipa umeimida lifnei hamakam. He takes a drop of embryonic fluid and places it before the Rabboni Shalom. V'oima tipa zumati aleh. What's going to be with this tipa? What kind of person is this going to be? So the question is, gibber or chalash? Will it be strong or weak? Osher or oni? Wealthy or poor? What's the other one? Gibber, chalash, osher, oni, chacham or tipish? Smart or not so stupid? Vilu tzadik v'rosha loita ma'ki akol b'dei shemayim chutz miyasham. We all know this Gemara. For me, this formed a foundation principle on understanding the challenges of our journey with our parenting. So Akol b'dei shemayim, everything is b'dei shemayim, chutz miyir shemayim, except for yir shemayim, that we have to work for. That takes work, arbit. It's an individual choice, and we have to work at it. But everything else is b'dei shemayim. Akol b'dei shemayim. V'osog Rashi. So Rashi says something that I think is so important for all of us as parents, and it forms, to me, the foundation in this day and age why we have to have kinusim and drashas, and why we have to be thoughtful and read books and really examine what we're doing in this day and age. Because Rashi says something fascinating. Akol b'dei shemayim, chutz miyir shemayim. What's akol b'dei shemayim? Zog Rashi, kol midoisov v'koraisov shel adam boin loy b'gezeres melech. A person's midas, their character, their personality, who they are, v'koraisov, and the events that happen to them in the course of their life, is akol b'dei shemayim. We think, as young parents, all of us, fantasized, I'm pashut that everyone in this room, when you had little babies, by the bris or the shalom zocher and by the kiddush, we had fantasies in our heads of who the neshama of this child could be. You know, by us in the Litvischer is the Brisker Rav, you know, by, I guess, Baal Shem Tov, Tzara Shnera. You know, we have fantasies. It's strange because we all had the same fantasies. I don't know how this neshama got split so much. But there it was. But we have fantasies about who it is. And what we don't realize is kol midoisav v'koraisav is boin lo b'gzeres melech. A person has a journey in this world, and whether we like it or not, they're going to go through events. They will be, first of all, born with midas, character, personality, that we have no idea what it is. It would be very helpful, it's true, if a child was born with a tag on its toe announcing ADD, ODD, OCD. It would be helpful, no? It would certainly help the doctor here with his diagnosis. But it would help us too, because then we know what we're dealing with. But we don't see no tags on the toes of babies. And yet, each one of them has a unique, distinct personality, midas, and character that as we try to very narrowly shift them through our systems, our Torah systems that are very refined and defined and restrictive, that we frequently see these children bursting at the seams, unable to cope with the restriction. It just doesn't work for so many kids. Nothing wrong with the system, it's not what I'm saying. But it simply doesn't work for their personality and character that we had no idea they were given when they came back, and neither did they. No one asked for it. I saw a sefer on learning disabilities in Ivrit. I think it was a translation from a classic English sefer, a book on learning disabilities. And Rav Kessler, Zayin Gesund Shlita from the Rav in Kiryat Sefer, he wrote an introduction to the book. And he pointed out, he said something over in the name of the Shevet HaLevi, in which he said that he has a feeling that one of the reasons children are struggling so much today is because Amal, he said, in the Friedrich Adoris, how did they learn? So a Melamed was hired either by the Rav of the Shtad or the Gevir of the Shtad. They hired a Melamed. And kids learned together with the Melamed. And he said, this is what he writes in the Sefer, B'Shem, the Shevet HaLevi. This is what he writes. It was very common to find children 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7-year-old, learning together b'chabura because they learned according to their ability, not to a chronological cutoff point on a calendar date that somehow defines whether you're going to be matzliach because of a date on a calendar. If you fit this side, you're here, and if that side, you're there. He said, a second thought, he said, was nicht nur that you learned according to your kishroinus and abilities and talents, maturity, but he said also when they got bored, what happened? When they got fed up, when they got early ADD. The early ADD kids before the diagnosis, they went out, Berushus of the Rebbe, into the Chotzer, and there in the Chotzer they played with the chickens, they played with the goats, they played with the sheep. And when they got fed up playing with the animals, they went and helped their mother with the kvisa, with the laundry, because that was back-breaking work. And after they got all the steam out, they went back into the class and they just carried on learning. Rav Kessler writes this in the Sefer, B'Shem, the Shevet HaLevi. He says, what are we asking of our children in this day and age where we're more and more restrictive, tighter and tighter with expectations that is so frequently not attuned to who the child is? And then we have expectations of them, and then when they start rebelling, because they can't cope with it, so we diagnose them frequently. I wonder, honestly, how many really do have an impulse disorder, an attentional disorder. I wonder how many are just frustrated kids that we're not tuned in to their way of learning, their level of learning. And so we create a whole industry around them of learning disabilities and learning programs and all the stuff, which ultimately wrecks the self-esteem of almost all kids who go through that. And the attempt to almost make them someone they're not. We can't know this going into it. You can't know which of your kids at some point are going to discover they can't do it. It's too hard for them. And they burst. So Rashi says, Midoisov, that's Midoisov. Min Hashamayim. You don't know. We don't know. There's no way to know. Can't take a baby at birth and suddenly find 15 psychologists to examine and know the capabilities. It takes years. It could take a lifetime to really know what was the abilities, the natural abilities of a child. So what's the chance in the world we live in that's becoming more and more tight, where the expectations for sitting and controlling oneself and learning and have the exactly right attuned cognitive ability at the right moment in a class to be able to do well? What's the chances of all the children being able to do that? That's Midoisov. And then says Rashi, Karoisov. The events that happen to children that we have no control over, that happen outside our homes and frequently happen inside our homes, but we were unaware. No one warned us. No one told us. No one suggested to us what we should look for. In our wildest dreams, for those of us that experienced abuse happening to our children, in our wildest dreams do we never, ever once consider that this could happen. And unfortunately, we find out years later it's happened when the damage is so profound already. Bullying that happens outside the home. Obviously, I can say sexual abuse. I can say I'm allowed. I'm going to say it once, just I refer to as abuse afterwards. Korosov, these are the events that happen to children in the course of their life that you can't control for. You absolutely, even if you think you know the sugya and you understand it and you talk to kids, you still can't prevent it. Where I'm not going to give a drosh on this subject, this passage for tonight, but another time, if you ever want me to come back on just this subject, is a subject with Fnei Atzmai. But we can't control for it. That's Korosov. Things happen. And there we are as parents, meaning the best, wanting the best, loving our children, truly wanting the best for them. I never yet met any parents who decided to have a dysfunctional home, dafka, just to be mazik their children. I never met such a thing. There isn't such a thing, that's why. There's only good parents who love their children and want the best. Whether what we think is the best for our children or not, that's already a kasha. Not always do we know. But at least that's what we want. There isn't any one of us who doesn't want the best for our children. And yet things happen to them under our noses. And by the time we discover what happened, the damage is profound. This is what Rashi is referring to. To get through this, to survive these things, one has to embrace those gezeres melech, and the child is going to go through their struggles, and we're going to help them. And we're going to understand, be makabel, das is min hashamayim, and leave it up. Lachem esrim. I tell people, you want to understand why? Die. Because lachem esrim, you'll find out. In olam emes, you'll find out. In this world, you won't. With this in mind, we can understand. I want to speak briefly about what is the life of our children, because when we understand their lives, what it's predicated on and built on, so then we can understand what we need to do to best protect them in a very challenging world, in a frightening world where things can happen. And all of us who've had this experience know that things can happen that are beyond our ability to control and protect from. They will happen to some of our children. Let's understand the importance of this so we could really grasp it. And by understanding the challenges and tragedies facing the struggling children, the ones who really go off and struggle, we can understand better how to help all children, all of them, every single one. The children's lives, I hope when I'm gone, they'll say this: Amar Rabbi Shimon, al shnei amudim, oilam hayeladim, children oimed. I hope they'll say it. What are these two amudim? These two amudim that the lives of all our children depend upon. One amud is the amud of Hatznei Leches, and the other amud is the amud of Limud HaTorah. These are the two amudim that our children's lives depend upon. They go through years and years of schooling, and our homes, of course, where we try to imbue them with these values. Let's take Hatznei Leches. Hatznei Leches is a fascinating thing. It's a midah, it's a koilel. It's not just about clothing and covering your body. It's much more than that. Hatznei Leches is a way of life. It's how to conduct oneself with humility in this world. It's a big midah about conduct in this world that covers lots of different things, including, of course, clothing, including shmiras hanayim, shmiras haguf, tznius. Lots. It includes if you are wealthy enough to donate a building, that you don't put 20-foot high red flashing neon words on the top mentioning your name. I donated this building. That you don't do. That's not Hatznei Leches. You have to walk with humility in this world. For our children, both the boys and girls growing up in our world, and this is true in the Hasidic world, in the Yeshivish world, it's the same in both. The dogish on our children is constantly, for the girls about tznius, about clothing, for the boys as they get older, about shmiras hanayim, shmiras haguf. Midas HaYesod. Can we leave it at that? Midas HaYesod in Yonim. That's their life. And we huck them. Every mother is busy with her daughters, making sure everything's covered properly and she conducts herself properly. Every Yiddish shtub, that's how we fear ourselves. And the boys, the same thing with shmiras hanayim, with shmiras haguf, that we work on these inyanim. These are key inyanim in the lives of our children. They're not, Hatznei Leches is not like shaking a lulav or putting on tefillin or making kiddush. It's not a gewisse mitzvah. It's who we are. It's our atzmius. It's the etzem mesias for every single little girl brought up by her mother, trained constantly in how to conduct herself and dress herself and clothe herself. And from the very early on in life, coming out the shower and how to cover herself as a little tiny girl. And we talk to her about it. And we constantly trying to build in her this internal concept of Hatznei Leches. And then with the boys, the same thing later on with the boys, when they come towards teenage years, about shmiras hanayim, shmiras haguf, the same thing. And constantly reinforced by well-meaning, and I mean this without a drop of cynicism, I mean it openly and honestly, well-meaning Rebbeim, who will talk very passionately to the boys about these inyanim of shmiras hanayim, shmiras haguf. And the same thing with the girls when they in school in Beis Yaakov, where they'll hear passionate drushes, well-meaning, passionate drushes And frequently these drashas are sort of crowned, the icing on the cake of these inspirational drashas are where it's pointed out that people who are asik in the opposite of these midas, that's goyish. That's a goy. That's a goy goma. That's a nicht kedushas Israel. That is goyish. And it's well-meaning. I'm going to say it again. It's all very well-meaning. What is the life like for the 1 in 5, 20% of all children in the frum world who will have a childhood sexual abuse experience? What is their life like in reference to what I've just described? How do they feel? 20%. The statistics are a minimum of 20%. I have to tell you, I once discussed it the first time I met the Rebbe, the very first time. He asked me, he heard people always criticize me for this statistic. You know, I say pretty much what I see, and I do as much research as I can. It's 32 years of doing this in the frum world, and people criticize me. 20%, are you crazy? They go crazy. It is 20%. And the Rebbe asked me, I hear you say 20%. And I thought, okay, here we go. First thing he asked me was the first time I ever met him after I made Aliyah. And he said, I disagree. Kedaka Kodesh. He said, I disagree with you. And I thought, oh gosh, here we go. And he said, I think it's more. I was shocked. It was the first person, your Rebbe. I say 20% because I'm scared to say the truth. Because they won't believe me. Your Rebbe was the first person ever that I met in all my years who said, no, I think it's more. It was amazing. His tefisa on the sugya was mind-boggling. I've never met anything like that. And from then on, we've had a good relationship, I think, right? I got the bracha, right? What is the life like for these poor kids who have had a sexual abuse experience? See, in our world, the ideal is that we bring a child to the chuppah. This is our ideal. This is what we all want. There's nothing more meaningful to us than we should fear our kids to the chuppah with no real idea about the whole sugya of sexuality. They know nothing about it. And then we give them chassan classes and kala classes, and we teach them. Why is that important? Because they're living in a bubble, a beautiful bubble. They're floating through life, protected by a beautiful bubble of hatznei leches. That's how they live their lives. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Before the chasna, the ideal of our entire system is that we should then integrate beautifully into the bubble of hatznei leches, the anhoga also of intimacy. We should introduce that there seamlessly, put it in there where it belongs, and then it's something we support. It's something we're proud of. It's something we can encourage our children. We're grateful for, and eventually they have children, and we're grateful, and we don't have to worry how. We understand, and we know, and we're just happy because it's seamlessly introduced. What happens to a poor child? 20% minimum, 1 in 5 in our world who have these experiences prior to getting married as children, frequently as young children. So now they're in a bubble of their own. They've got the bubble of hatznei leches, but they got a new bubble to do with sexuality. They have no way to do anything with it. It has no value, can't be supported, makes them internally feel like a goy, because they're going to hear this constantly through their journey, through our system, through our schools, and through our homes. That's what they're going to hear. It doesn't belong in the other bubble. It's not there. It's a separate bubble where they live with shame, self-hatred and loathing. I had a Beis Yaakov girl walked into my office, and it was clear to me that her tznius was too tzanua. It was too tight. It was too much. And I asked her, I asked her if she'd been through abuse, and she was shocked that I would even ask the question. And I told her why I asked. I said, you're too tzanua. There's something off here. Turns out she eventually showed me over 100 cuts on her arm. Over 100 on one arm alone. Scars from cutting because of the abuse she went through as a child that she never got dealt with, never helped with. And she really wasn't Shomer Shabbos inside. She wasn't. And yet she'd gone through the system. I don't know what would have happened. The world they live in, you see, is this separate world where they're introduced to a world where you can't escape. You can't turn that off. Once a child is abused, they're abused. They're now in the sugya of sexuality in a way that it cannot be supported. It can only be looked down at and loathed, where the self-loathing is so powerful and destructive that most of them want to die frequently. The amud of Hatznei Leches is destroyed. Do we see that? They can't. They don't fit there. Every time, in fact, they hear any drasha, anything to do with it, they have to either dissociate. We see this all the time. They dissociate. You see kids staring at the ceiling in class. They're just staring because they can't cope, because they can't hear. They can't hear what's going on because what they hear tells them I'm a goy gomer, and if you would know what I know about myself and my anhaga, you would shecht me. You would destroy me. That's what they're feeling constantly every day. It destroys the amud of Hatznei Leches. They can't exist anymore. And many of them, all of them, in my humble opinion, frequently think of dying. That's the struggle they have. Some of them dissociate so completely, they're able to suppress what happened so completely, they cut themselves out of that sugya to survive so completely, only to discover that one day they have to get married and face that sugya they've shut out, and then they destroy their lives completely. They get divorced quickly, they can't cope, the shame, the pain, there is no escape from this. This is korosov, you understand? No one does this. This happens to our children under our watch as parents, and we have no idea. None of us knew. None of us were ever told what to say to our kids, when to talk to our kids, how to protect. What are we even protecting? How many people were told that you don't put a boy over age 9 sleeping in the room with a girl of any age? How many people knew that? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but honestly, how many of us knew that you simply do not put a boy over 9, that means 10 plus, in a room with a girl of any age? You don't do that. It's not fair. Because that boy could wake up one night and see a little girl exposed and be interested. And so we wrecked him. And maybe wrecked her too. There's so much we were never told. We didn't know. And before we knew it, things happened. And the amud of Hatznei Leches is destroyed. I'm saying this b'kitza nimratz mamish. This is a drasha, like I said, for Zichalein, to go into in detail. This is a 2-3 hour workshop to explain this fully. But Dailach Baramiza. What about the learning struggles with the kids? That's the other amud, is limud HaTorah. We expect the best out of our children in terms of limud HaTorah. We expect them all to be able to learn, and they should all be learned according to whatever age level, in a homogeneous group, in a class that's overstuffed usually. And there's always like the few exceedingly bright kids, boys or girls, who just get it. When you actually analyze what's going on in that class, you discover that about 20% are doing amazing, about 20% are completely shut off, done, And about 60% are struggling like crazy to do well and don't know how. Desperately want to, but don't know how. It's just beyond them. It's just too far. What does that feel like? When every day we as parents send a kid into a classroom every day to be affirmed that you're an idiot, that you can't quite do it, never to get. A Rebbe once told me, that he was upset because I said, when the few bright kids, the 20%, he asked Tosfos Kasha, boys, stand up. He asked Tosfos Kasha, everyone stand, right? And they mean well. Please understand, they mean well. How do all the rest of the kids who will never in their life ever get that experience feel every time that happens? Where do we get the right to do this? I'm sorry. Neither of us got Tosfos Kasha, so we're in good shape. You can end up good. It's okay. But seriously, what do they feel like? When I first recognized and came up with the language of learning trauma, people thought I was mad. I will tell you that amongst the great thinkers in the secular world, when I exposed them to these words, Van der Kolk, Borges, these people, they went crazy because they didn't know how they missed it. Micro traumas, when you have a myriad of micro traumas happening day after day, cumulatively we now know they form something called complex trauma, which is just as bad as any single event trauma. And how many of these poor kids go through the system day after day and see the disappointed looks every time they come home on their parents' face because the grades, we got a phone call, you got to try harder. That by the way, those words, try harder, if you ever actually sit with a kid who has a problem learning and you answer, what does it feel like when someone said try harder? They want to kill someone. They feel like murderous. Try, with what? With what part of me am I meant to try? Should I look harder at the words? What? No, I'm serious. It is heartbreaking when you sit down with a kid who knows I'm trying with everything I got. I can't get it. It doesn't go in. I lose it. How many kids have a subtle processing problem? A processing problem, it's unbelievable. We never knew about it. My kids struggled. Very much so, because they had processing problems. And I had no clue what it was. And I've apologized. For 20 years, I've been apologizing to my kids, because I didn't know what a processing problem. I'll tell you a processing problem. A processing problem, I'll give you a mashal, what it's like. Can anyone juggle? I can tell you, I can juggle one orange. I'm very good at it. I'm very good. I can juggle one orange. I have tried two, and I can keep them going for about 30 seconds. Give me three, I drop all of them instantly. They're all gone. I'm good with one, though. But three, they're gone. Do you know that the average teacher, the research shows that the average teacher teaches 3 distinct pieces of information at a time, and you watch the kids' eyes until they're all seem to get it, and then you go weiter. You don't do more than 3. You know why? Because if you do 4, here's the dilemma. I got to write it all down, right? I got to get it inside. So am I going to hold on to the idea, the new ideas you just gave me, Rabbi, of my team? I'm going to hold on to them, or I'm going to free a part of my brain for the new one. You see, a processing problem is when you can't do more than 3. In fact, you can only do 2. What is it like to be a kid who can only hold in their brain 2 distinct pieces of information, and they're fine with them, and if they'd have time to write it down, they'd be fine. But then on comes the 3rd one. Imagine you're juggling eggs, and you got 3. See, 1 egg, I think most of us could do pretty good, right? 2, not so good. 3, a processing problem is where you can't be typhus more inyonim without, you can't get the new one without recording or letting go of the old one. What does that feel like? It feels like death. You feel like a total discard. You feel like an utter failure. You develop an anxiety disorder. And you feel like a fool, and you hate Torah. You hate learning. You hate Judaism. Because you're putting me through this unbearable experience, and all I ever get told is try harder. Try harder. If you were more mature, if you would just try harder. If you wouldn't treat the classroom as a playground. Right? What's all the famous lines? If you would actually be awake occasionally in class. Do you know why kids go to sleep in class? It's dissociate. They dissociate. It's part of dissociative disorder. They want to separate from the unbearable experience of feeling like an idiot. The micro traumas for kids who can't learn, and there's de facto learning. I'm not saying every kid's learning disabled, but there's a huge number who have what I call de facto learning disabilities. They don't actually have a learning disability, but their mind is not open to learn. There's sorrows at home. There's financial struggles. There's medical struggles at home. There's all sorts. They brought an Alzheimer's grandmother in to live with them because they didn't know what else to do. And meanwhile, all the little kids are falling apart because of our Mesiras Nefesh for Bobby. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just reflecting what happens. They're called de facto learning disabilities because this kid is in such sorrows in their brain that they can't learn. And so the Amud of Limud HaTorah falls apart for these kids too. And with it goes Judaism, goes Torah mitzvahs, goes Yadus. Because Yadus is why I have to learn. So if Yadus is why I have to learn, then Yadus is out. That's why Mori Varebi Mashgiach Matzel Solomon Shliti Shtever Shlema, that he always called the kids who were going off push-outs, not dropouts. He said he never met a dropout. He only met push-outs. And that's the truth. I can tell you, I've done the work for so many decades. And when you actually talk to the kids, you see they really want to stay. But they don't know how. They don't know how to be there in a way that makes them feel good. See, the 20% are having a blast because it's attuned to their kishron. They're nourished deeply. In the 60%, occasionally, if they do taka try harder and push themselves, they can amal, but they can't do it every day. It's impossible. That's paro disorder. That's like giving the cash. That's paro disorder. You gave the cash, and then tomorrow, okay, now go do it every day. You found it, do it every day. These kids can push themselves. They can't push themselves every day. It's just crazy unfair. When these amudim of Torah and the amud of Atznei Lechas fall apart, their lives collapse, completely collapse. And this happens frequently in our world to children. When we sit with children and talk to them, almost every single one of them has gone through this experience where one of these two or both collapsed and their life fell with it and they're completely lost. And here's the hard thing. You cannot know if this is going to happen to your child. That's the painful reality. See, I hope I've made the case why it's crucial that we do one thing in parenting, just one. We create resilience in our children. If we don't create resilience, what does it mean in Yiddish? Someone type in Yiddish, resilience? Oh my gosh. Resilience, the ability to bounce back. Is there a Yiddish word for that? Nah. Resilience. Resilience means in English, it means the ability to bounce back. That means you go through horrible hardship, pain, struggle, trauma, even trauma, and you can bounce back. You can find a way back. You don't go off. It is possible to lose these two amudim and not go off the derech. This is a fact which, if we only knew this, if we only had known this from day one how to build resilience in our children. Then when we discover midoisov v'karoisov, what we've done is inoculated our children so that they can bounce back. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take them through nisyonos. We all go through nisyonos. But they can bounce back from these nisyonos if we would only understand this word resilience. Can I say it again? Resilience. Someone's going to find the Yiddish teich for it. What's the word? I can't hear. Hitoshashut. Kosher? Kosher. Oh, kosher hitoshashut. Hitoshashut. The ability to bounce back. To litoshesh. Okay, not bad. We're getting there. You'll tell me afterwards. Okay, it's very good. But I think it's Hebrew, no? It's not Yiddish. I want Yiddish. Resilience. How do you build resilience? See, this is the yesod that those of us... Here's the heartbreaking thing. What I'm about to do now is make everyone feel miserable. Now, it's not my intention. But I see everywhere I speak, that's what happens. So I'm going to make everyone miserable because I'm going to tell everyone what you should have done. So everyone's going to cry and feel miserable and walk out. What does he want from us? But I will promise you, before I finish, they told me, what time is Shachris? They told me, okay. Before I finish, I will tell you how to do what I call resilience lemafreya. Resilience lemafreya, it's good touch, no? Resilience lemafreya. I will tell you beforehand, but we have to understand what it means. There's a mitzvah, we all know the mitzvah Piriyivya, that we know, having children. But the Chinuch explains there are actually two parts to this mitzvah. One is the technical, have a baby. And there's a mitzvah, Pasuk in Yeshayahu. The Pasuk says, Lo so bara l'sheves yitzara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not create the world to be empty, but to be full of people. Now I don't want to go into the lamdas here. This is a chabur already. But there's two Tosas in Menachos. I don't want to go into it. But just you should know I have it in my back pocket. And I worked it through with Lamdonim and Rabbanim. If you ask me later, I'll explain. But based on these two Tosasim, I want to teach this mitzvah, L'Sheves Yitzara, is that Eibishter wanted to fill the world not with crazy people who couldn't build a yishuv for him, but with healthy, gesunte people. The mitzvah L'Sheves Yitzara means that Eibishter will that we should fill a world with children who are healthy in body and mind, happy, capable of self-love, and capable of loving others. This is the way I teach this mitzvah, the Shevis Yitzara. And like I said, I got a little backup from a couple of Tosasim that support this. That's our primary job. The first job is to build into our children. This is pre-mitzvahs. You understand? This is pre-mitzvahs. This takes precedence over installation of mitzvahs. That means if there's a stira between the installation of mitzvahs and the development of a child who is healthy in body and mind, happy, capable of self-love and loving others, then that takes precedence with a little child. Think of it as 0 to 6 before the chiyuv age of chinuch. It's an easy way to think of it. Is 0 to 6, that's what you're meant to be doing. Not worrying about installing mitzvahs. Avada, if you can also install mitzvahs at an early age into your children, the mitzvahs. We can put mitzvahs into kids, washing and benching and all sorts of stuff. If you can do it not at the expense of creating a healthy, happy person, then matayv. What could be better? It's gvaldig. But here's the chiddush. When there's a stira, a contradiction between installing the attempt to install a mitzvah and making a kid unhappy and unloved, I'm talking about the 0 to 6, making them happy and loved takes precedence. That comes first. That's the clay kibble. That's the foundation for creating a healthy human being on which mitzvahs and the rest of their life will install beautifully. And how many of us didn't know this and nudged the kishkas out of our little children to do mitzvahs, making them miserable, making them anxious, making them frightened, making them feel like a failure, or having a negative relationship. I heard from so many Gedolim, so I asked Rebbes and I asked Rabbanim and Gedolim the last 30 years. This is one of the questions I asked. How does it look in the home of Gedolim in those first few years? They all told me, yeah, we mentioned, wash Negelwasser. I said, well, you weren't makpid on it? I said, we said it once. I said, that was it? Yeah, eventually they learned how to do Negelwasser. It was amazing. It was shocking. I was like, you didn't make them wash and bench and dust. He said, we reminded them once. The little kids. The ikka was they should be happy. I was blown away. When I first heard this, I couldn't believe what I heard. I was mamish shocked. But I heard it everywhere. That the first chelik of our chinuch, of our children, should be they should feel loved, capable of self-love and loving others, happy. And we never, in the early years, compromise that. And when we do that, we started the foundation of resilience. They're happy people. We're building them to feel a kesher to us, to our lives. We're doing this also another drush on a different, the full attachment drush is another time. But we're creating a connection to us. And we, by the way, our relationship is where Masoros HaTorah happens, not through Yediyah, but through relationship. The Masoros HaTorah does not happen through Yediyas. It happens through relationship. They want to be like us. We know this is true because we often I meet kids who barely stayed frum and young adults who barely stuck in, and they hang in there. Somehow they manage to stay. And they tell me their stories of horror in the yeshivas and the system, the whole works, and I listen very patiently. And then I ask them, tell me something, was there ever a rebbe, a teacher, someone who made a difference in your life? Listen to this, amazing. Everyone says yes. Oh, yes, my fifth grade. My fifth grade Rebbe. I wouldn't be frum if not for him. Not a chance. I had a third grade teacher. She was so amazing. I remember her well. You hear always a nusach from every one of these people who just barely hung in there. There was this one significant person, and that's why I'm frum today. And they're teary when they tell you this over. I then ask them, can I ask you a question? This is not a bechina, don't panic. Don't ever panic attack. It's not a bechina, it's just a question. They say, okay. I say, do you remember one thing that person taught you? And they all go blank. No one ever remembers anything, ever. Not one piece of Yediyas HaTorah do they remember from this amazing person who is the reason they're from today. Because Masoros HaTorah doesn't come through Yediyah, it comes through relationship. When we do this first 5 years roughly, and not that we stop at 5 and then we get mean, but we only, for the first 5 years, right, we do this, we're building resilience. I want to show you another way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is like this. There are 3 distinct stages of parenting. 0 to 2 would be that which I just described. And then it continues. We don't stop at 2. 0 to 2 is unconditional love. Doesn't matter what they do. Doesn't matter how they disturb your life. It doesn't matter how much they interfere with your life. You can be all bedecked, ready to run to work, and you're giving Cheerios to your baby, and someone calls and you look around and they throw the whole thing of Cheerios all over your sheitel and your clothing and everything, and you're all ready to run out, and you're late anyway to get to work. And you're meant to laugh. You're meant to take out your camera and take pictures. Right? If you paint the dining room wall, finally your husband decided to paint the wall after 50 years. He finally painted it. And then it turns out one of your little toddler, 18 months, got hold of a red permanent marker and thought they were a Gilgal of Picasso. and they're in there drawing, and then suddenly you discover all these drawings like cavemen all over your freshly painted wall. You're not meant to evoke the Spanish Inquisition to find out who gave him the pen, who left the pen, and screaming and yelling. You're meant to take out your camera and pose in front. It's good for Sheva Brachas, by the way. These pictures, moiridik for Sheva Brachas. You're meant to take pictures with your toddler in front of it. Okay, afterwards, make sure there's no pens and try and teach him. But you're meant to laugh. You're meant to laugh. 0 to 2, whatever they do, you laugh. Because when you laugh, you install in your child the feeling, I am beloved. There's nothing I can do to hurt that. They know they've done something. And yes, you can teach them about their Cheerios. You can do a lot of things. But they learn they're loved. And when they learn they're loved, you're installing resilience into your children. Does that make sense? That's 0 to 2. We add around 2, limit setting. We have to set limits on our children. So we don't stop the unconditional love. We should continue. But at 2, we add limit setting. Now, I've reframed. If you ever heard me talk on these subjects, I actually reorganized my thinking on this based on one of my young couples was biased for Shabbos, and we were debating this, and my daughter was right and I was wrong. I used to say, if you ever heard me speak on this, something called rules, structure, and discipline. I believe all children need rules, structure, and discipline in order to thrive and grow up to be healthy, mature adults. Otherwise, you have anarchy. You have crazy anarchy. You need children to have rules, structure, and discipline. And this is the way I spoke for many, many years. Then it dawned on me, it sounds like a soundbite. Rules, structure, and discipline. We need rules, structure, and discipline. Like without any havana of what we're saying. So I want to say it differently tonight. And I've changed my thinking in this. Here's what it is. What all children need, starting age 2, and it goes up until about 14 to 16, depending on the culture, environment, age, gender, there's variations, but somewhere 14 to 16, they need limit setting. Here's what limit setting looks like. Structure, rules, and discipline. Not rules, structure, and discipline. And I want to explain the lumdus behind it. This is a chiddush. All children really just need structure. A child is born self-centered. They do not care about anyone else. If they're hungry, they scream until you feed them. If they're dirty, they scream till you change them. If they've got stomach problems or they feel, gurgling in their chest, they scream until you soothe them. They do not care if you have to go to work tomorrow. They don't care if you have to teach a class tomorrow. They don't care if you have to go to a job. They don't care. They scream like crazy and get you. They can wake the dead, right? That's what they do. They're made that way. Hopefully, they don't behave that way after they walk out of the chuppah. We would hope not. Somewhere we have to change that. But that's the way they're born to survive. They are self-centered. They're not selfish. They're self-centered. They center on themselves. Somehow, we as parents are meant to develop in them the ability to be other-centered, to center on someone else, not myself, to learn how to care for other people's feelings and sensitivities too. That's why we structure them. We structure them in order they should grow up to be healthy human beings and not just self-centered, crazy people. They have to be other-centered to function in school, function in yeshiva, function by davening. They have to be other. They can't just take what they want. They got to care about other people. So we need structure to enforce structure as parents. There's a bedtime structure. There's a dress code structure, a food, eating. We used to have a thing 6 feet on the floor. Anyone knows 6 feet on the floor? We grew up in England. 6 feet on the floor. There you go. You don't push back on your chest. 6 feet on the floor. Thank you for the demonstration. Appreciate it. Right? 6 feet, all 6 feet. The chair has 4, and you have 2, for those who didn't chop yet. Okay? We structure our children in all sorts of ways, depending again on the culture and the family and the age and the environment. But that's what we're meant to do as parents. We have to. It's our chayv to give them structure. That's it, structure. How do we communicate structure to children when they're 2, 3, 4 years old? We do not sit them down and give them a philosophy class explaining to them why structure is so important so you can get married and you go to school and you can function in life. They're 3 years old. It doesn't work. So what we do is we give them rules. The tachlis of rules is to convey to children what the structure is, because structure is philosophy. Rules is tangible. So we give them rules in order they should know what is the structure. We frame the structure with rules and parameters. That's the only purpose of the rules. If we would give the structure and tell it to our children, this is what the structure is, and they would do it, they wouldn't need rules. There's no value but etzem in rules. Rules is only to communicate to children what is the structure. Does that make sense? Okay. Here's the problem with rules. Rules bend. We bend them. We confuse our poor children because we make rules that we then don't keep. So they have no clue if these rules are hard and fast. To give you a perfect example, bedtime is 7 o'clock. You sit your kids down, bedtime 7 o'clock. That's it, 7 o'clock, boom, 7 o'clock, the alarm goes off, bedtime, let's get the kids to bed, right? Except when you're on an important phone call. Then it's 10 past 7. Then at 10 past, it's 7 past 7, quick, we gotta go, aye. What did you just tell your kids? 7 o'clock is not bedtime. What do you think they just learned? And we do this with all the rules. The rules are flexible because we make them flexible. So how on earth do they know if bedtime is 7 or 7:10? Maybe it's 7:11. Maybe it's 7:11 and 30 seconds. Right? And we all have a kid like that who's going to tell us that. Last night was 7:11, right? And 30 seconds. So can I have an extra 10 seconds tonight? Like, how do I know? Right? There was actually a Gemara in Bava Basra. Everyone knows the Gemara in Bava Basra where the 2 chicken farmers had chicken. Had chickens. They were 2, and they were closed in. One night was a big storm, and the roofs blew off. In the morning, you got thousands of chickens milling around. Who's? Which belonged to which farmer? So they say, okay, measure a line between the two chicken, whatever they call them, shuvach. What's it called in English? Whatever it is, a coop, right? Draw a line between. Those on this side of those, and those. So Frank, the Gemara, one of the Amoraim asked, but he was like a teenager. He must have been a teenager, this Amora. He has to be like 15 years old, because he fragged, what happens if one chicken has a leg on one side of the line and a leg on the other side of the line? So the Gemara says, Tony Livra, go teach in the street. They throw him out the Beis HaMedrash. You know what he should have done? Cook the chicken, invite the other farmer over for supper, and have supper together. Like, what do you want? There's always a line. Our kids, our teenagers, they're B'nai Bonim from this Amora. Because they always find whatever rule you give. So what's the tachlis of consequence, rule, structure, and discipline? What's the tachlis of discipline is to help us convey to our children the importance of the rules. That's the ganze tachlis. So structure is really the purpose. But to do it, it's like 3 levels of medication. You give this one, you give that one because of the side effects, and that one the side effects of the second one, right? And sometimes the 4th one. So it's the same thing. The tachlis is structure. The tachlis is structure. Rules are needed to convey the structure, but we're just as imperfect as our children are, and we don't stick to the rules properly. So we need discipline in order to convey to the kids that the rules count. That makes sense? That's structure, rules, and discipline. That's 2 to 14, 16, which should be done with love and kindness, with the same 0 to 2 love and kindness and acceptance as we simply communicate structure, rules, and discipline. That's what we're doing. Discipline with warmth and love. Of course, I'm so sorry, Shefala. Oh, because discipline, they'd say, that rule does count. I didn't know. You see, now I know because I got a patch. No patch, but I got in trouble. I got some sort of discipline. I learned somehow the discipline conveys to the child the rules matter. And if we do that well, we come to the third stage, which is guidance. Guidance, where our kids trust us. They trust us. They look to us because we've been compassionate from day one, building inside them a sense of being loved, of being healthy in body and mind, happy, self-love, and loving others. We've always been doing that with them as we then introduce, because here's the chiddush. Listen to this. When you don't do the 0 to 2 properly, when we don't do the unconditional love properly first, then when we do the structure and the rules and the discipline, they think we're just mad with them. They don't realize this is for you, not me. But when you've done the 0 to 2, when you've done those first 5 years of building the love inside the children, the unconditional love, when you do the structure, rules, and discipline, they somehow unconsciously intuit that this was done for my benefit. This was not my frustrated parent who just needs to get the kids to bed because I can't deal with the noise anymore. That's not what they hear. What they hear is that I'm there for you. This is for your benefit, not for me. I'm doing this to help you. And they somehow absorb the structure, rules, and discipline as an extension of that early unconditional love, which we proved again and again and again as they got up to mischief in our homes, which all kids do, and we just approach them with love and kindness. That's inoculating them that my feelings about you are that you're perfect. There's nothing you can do wrong. You're a gorgeous child. So then when I do the structure, rules, and discipline, it gets incorporated into that same space we created of unconditional love, and they accept it. And it's just so beautiful. Mashenkin, if we didn't do that first, they feel punitive. They feel punished. They feel we're angry with them, and they resist it. Who are you to tell me? And if we do that right, they turn to the last stage, which is guidance. Guidance when they seek our counsel for what yeshiva to go to, or seminary, what kind of job, what kind of career, what kind of shidduch. What should I do in my life? They trust us. And they turn naturally to us. That's what parenting looks like. That's what it really should look like. I'm going to give you a third way to look at it. A third way, and this is really the foundation of something we call attachment. Attachment, as I made the argument earlier, is the key to resilience with our children. If they feel attached to us, then when they go through problems, they turn to us for help. If they don't feel deeply attached to us, then they do not turn to us, and they suffer in terrible shame, embarrassment, and silence till they, Rahman al-Islam, can go off or destroy their lives. Attachment is the key. This is the Achon Chaviv of the three Shitas. What does attachment look like? So I saw this in Dr. Dan Siegel's book, Parenting from the Inside Out, many years ago. And he just mentions it almost like agav. And when I saw it, bells went off in my head. And I realized how powerful this system is. Because the system of attachment he describes, which I've been using now many, many years very successfully, both in prevention, and this is the chiddush, if you're feeling bad because you didn't do any of this till now properly, attachment does repair work. Attachment does repair work. We can repair that and rebuild this resilience in our children at any age. You could do this with kids in their 40s, if parents would only know. An attachment is built around the 4 S's: safe, secure, seen, and soothed. Let me just tell you quickly about each one. I'll finish in a moment. Safe, secure, seen, and soothe. These are the 4 S's of attachment. Every one of us should know this, because this is the system both of prevention of kids struggling and going off. And what's profound about this is we use this as the system for bringing them back, for giving them their lives back, for reattaching them to us. Of course, going off takes 3 months, and coming back can take 30 years. But that's irrelevant, because who cares? This world is not what it's about. It's the next world, so who cares? What difference? What difference? My eldest daughter struggled when she was 14. She had a very severe processing problem, and we didn't know anything about it, and she's brilliant. And a brilliant person with a processing problem was doomed in Lakewood. In those days, it was not shaykh, and no one understood it, and she was destroyed and went through a long, long journey of struggle. Some of you have seen the book, Raising a Loving Family. My book, I didn't want her to see it. I certainly didn't want her to know that it won a gold medal by the Goyim in the secular world in psychology. I didn't want her to know that, because on her back of her struggles, everything I learned, I should be Shimon Russell. So I never told her. And then one day she WhatsApped me, "We need to speak." And I realized she knew. And I called her up expecting to get bashed. She's 42. She has her own family. Baruch Hashem, she's from, with a from family. She's 42. And I started apologizing about the book and its hatzlacha. I didn't want her to know it won an award. You know, she's like very featured well in the book, in the anecdotes. I have actually a grandson of mine, when he's home for Shabbos, how old is he? I think he's 7 or 8. He goes through the stores working out which one of his uncles and aunts is who. And he gets them. It's amazing. So I called her and I thought she was going to kill me. She said to me, "Tom," she said, "I think I'm over it. I think I'm over it." 28 years. It was 28 years of work. She said, "Now I think," and she actually said to me, "I'm actually proud of you." First time she said that ever in my life, that you're trying to help other children. You're using what we went through to help others. I'm proud of you. It took 28 years of working on attachment to hear that. 28 years. Attachment is profound. It's the key. And who cares? This life is not what it's about. So like I said, who cares how long it takes? What difference? We all become better for the experience. Safe, secure, seen, and soothed creates resilience and repairs resilience. We have to create safety for our children where they feel safe in our presence. They're not afraid of being hit. They're not afraid of being hurt. They're not afraid of being humiliated and embarrassed. We have to create an environment of safety where the child doesn't have to hear their father's footsteps coming in the house, as happened to so many of us when we were kids, and they run and hide behind the couch because they can tell the way those footsteps sound. These are real realities of the last generation. We have to today create an environment where our kids feel safe when they come home. They're safe to see us. They're not afraid we're going to be upset with them about something. Upset with the way they're dressed, upset with the way they act, upset with their grades, upset they went to late to school, always upset about something. That's not safety. There was a Harvard study one time where they worked out that interactions between parents and children were 90% negative, only 10% positive. We can't risk that. We, in this world we live in, where kol midosa v'karosa, things just happen to our children that we can't control, we need to create resilience. And that means making our kids feel safe. 90% of the time we have to be positive. We can tolerate maybe 10 not. Safety is crucial to our children. They feel safe in our homes, safe in their relationships with us, safe that we've got their back. As I tell the schools, when the schools fight, there's always, they call the parent in. There's this terrible moment when they call in the parent. And Menalim all over the world ask me how to handle this moment. Because you got this kid struggling, they call in the parent, and you got like this horrible tension. Because the parent is about to be like criticized as if somehow they should have made perfect children. And the school is afraid to be criticized, how you're wrecking my kid. And this tension is awful. So I tell the schools, when they come in, the parent sits down, the first thing you tell a parent is, you have a chayv kadosh to protect your child. You have to put the protection of your child first before any consideration of our school. That's your chayv kadosh, not the school. It's your child. They have one parent, it's you. And you have to have their back. You have to protect them and stand up for them. You have to fight us in this school for the protection of your child. That's your job. That's what a manal should say to every parent. And then the manal can say, and we have a chayv for all the children in the school. That's our chayv kaddish, is all the children. But you have to fight for your child. And let's see if we can make this fight together and do this together, where we'll protect the school and you'll protect your child. A child needs to know, I have my parents' back under all circumstances, even if it was my fault. That's safety. A child has to feel secure in their home, primarily secure in the love husband and wife, their father and mother have for each other, the respect and love you have for each other. They have to feel secure. They have to feel secure that they're going to get clothes in the season as they should, that food will be available. They have to be secure at the Shabbos table. They're not going to be humiliated. Mori Varebi Mashkiach, he almost banned parsha sheets, what they call here daf kesher, right? He almost banned them. He wanted to get rid of them. I reorganized a way to do it that worked for us, because I saw it was embarrassing most of my children. Parsha sheet, they didn't even know what the parsha was. Forget about the parsha sheet. You know how humiliating it is when you go through those parsha sheets and they don't know? By the way, the youngest one always knows everything. They know the entire Kol Torah Kulai with midrashim that I never even heard of. They're 5 years old and they know midrashim I never heard of. I'm the one embarrassed, not them. It's like crazy. So we did the youngest. We only did the youngest at the table. In the afternoon, privately, if I had to chaza with them, I'd privately do the rest if I had to chaza. At the table, youngest only, and then we would ask if anyone wants to add something. If someone's got something to say, Gesundheit, please feel free to add. And so there was a beautiful conversation, and no one was humiliated. We have to provide an environment of security where it's a secure feeling to come to that Shabbos table, to come to that sukkah, and not before Pesach, where you've got basically two psychotic parents running around the house, mother more psychotic than the father usually, but nevertheless both psychotic. I don't know which medications you can prescribe, Dr. Friedman. Pre-Pesach anxiety disorder. What is it? Hotels. There you go. We're mad. We run around mad, and we think our kids are going to love Pesach. What are we, crazy? And then, of course, Sukkot, because until you put the Sukkah, it has to be like Erev Sukkot after Shkia, when you finally finish the Sukkah, just so everyone has a heart attack. We have to provide an environment of security where the kids feel secure in our homes, secure with us, secure they're going to get their needs met, and they're going to be loved. That's the second one. Seen is mamish unbelievable how we abandoned seen in our world. Seen. You have to see your kids. Guess what? There are parents who parent their kids. Here's how they do it. We got this Chaim Megelim, this group of things called kids. Okay, let's get the kids in the bath. Let's get the kids in the car. Let's get the kids to bed. It's like this group of things called kids that we're just it's mad. Each one, one chacham once said to me in my office, I don't want to say, I shouldn't make too much fun of him, but he was like totally frustrated with me. And he said, Nein, he said to me, you don't understand. I'm sorry, did I drive you away? Okay. He said, you don't understand me, he said. Because I was trying to explain to him the uniqueness of every child. He said, no. He said, the vav of Dakai geht auf den Tata. Chanoich lena pidakai shalav. He's the chanoich, he's the subject. He got up and walked out. Yeah, what do you know, Russell? Yeah. His poor wife sat there like appalled and shocked. You see what I live with, she said. Vav of Daka gate up and tata. It's a crazy guy. Seen. We have to see our kids as unique. They're all unique and different. They've all got unique. That's actually what chinuch is. When you think about the word chinuch, there's a melamed, there's a mechanech, right? Well, what's a melamed? He's melamed. He's installing yediyah. A melamed installs yediyah in the brain of a child, right? Melamed, installation. Kamatz aleph ah. He teaches it, and b'chach mosai puts the yediyah in the child's brain. A mechanech is about extraction, not about installation. A mechanech pulls out of a child, what is your uniqueness? Who are you? Who is this special person in front of me? What are your tchunas? What makes you unique? Let me pull that out and then show you how you can be you in our wonderful Torah world. How you can be the best you. This is you. That's like Chanukah's Abayis is not a time to show off your house and shtach the neighbors. That's not what it's for. It's a time to acknowledge the potential was liegt in dem Stub. For a Shabbos, a Yontav, bring up a family, the potential was liegt da. That's a Chanukah's Abayis. It's about the potential. And we pull that out and acknowledge it. That's the same. That's what chinuch is. Chinuch really is. That's why it can only be chanoich na pidakai, his derech, because it's about him, not you. A melamed installs, a mechanech extracts, and then shows the child what's special about you, who you are. And guess what? All of our children are different. They all look like this glob when they're little. But guess what? When the youngest is 20, and the oldest is in their 40s, you suddenly discover they're completely different. They got different homes, run different lives. It's amazing, because they were different to begin with. They're different, unique neshamas. Seen is where we enjoy seeing our children for who they are. We're always looking. You whisper Friday night. I bench the kids Friday night. I used to always try during the week to think about something I noticed special. And then after I give them a bracha Friday night, I would whisper in their ears something special, something I noticed about your uniqueness. Kids have to be rejoiced for who they are, not just sheep we're pushing into the corral of life, and they're all the same as each other, and let's just like brand them and push them through. You know, that's not chinuch. They have to be seen. Seen is crucial. Crucial. When you see your child, then your child feels safe and secure with you and feels appreciated and valued by you. They feel valued and they trust you because you see them. Some are good in learning, some are good in different types of learning. Some are good in halacha, and some in lomdas, and some are good in just b'kiyas. Some, they're artistic, some are musical. We have to find out what's their tchuna and teach them how to use it for Klal Yisrael, for the best for themselves and for everybody else. That's seen. And the last one is soothed. Soothed. Soothed means when they hurt themselves in life, that we soothe them. The first thing you do is you stick them on your lap and you soothe them and you make them feel good, even if it's pertinently obvious that they caused on themselves the problem. Kal v'chayma, then you put them on your lap and you soothe them. You make them feel, I'm with you. Ima neichi b'tzar. I feel your pain. Even, you want to give them a mussar drosha that it was all their fault? You're a teenager, finally got a driver's license. My father gave me the key. I remember the first time after I passed my driver's test, my father was Shalom. He was just a very common sense, wise man. He gave me the car keys. And his words to me were, there were two things he said to me. He said, A, if you want to get there quicker, leave earlier. I'll never forget it. And the second thing he said to me, when you damage the car, just come and tell me about it. Not if. On my maiden voyage out, I damaged the car. Drove myself to North London for Shabbos, and I damaged the car. And I came home, and I gave him the key. Dad, I damaged the car. Okay, are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. He said, does it still work? I said, it still works. Okay, so we're all good. First soothe. You want to give a mussar drosha about how your kid caused the problems on themselves, tell him tomorrow. Tell him 2 days' time. Don't tell him now. Don't mish soothing and connecting and beruhiging him. Don't mix that with the mussar. Don't give him the eye. Really? Again? Okay, fine. You're okay? All right, fine. Soothe him. Love him. Make them feel good and cared for. You want to give the drasha? No problem. 2-3 days later, wait. What's the difference? Who cares? They'll be more receptive anyway. Chances are, if you soothe them properly, and by the way, this is evidence-based. When you soothe your children properly, when they caused the problem, by the time you finish soothing, they tell you, I feel like such a fool. And you don't have to say anything. They tell you what they did, and they tell you they shouldn't have done this, and they cry, and they feel bad, and you're noticeable with that too, and you say, I must be hard for you, not like, yeah, right. You say, well, if you learned something from this, good, then I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you. If you soothe properly, they almost always own it up. Safe, secure, seen, and soothe form attachment with us. They form attachment to us. And what's been proven, and I did the research on this over the years many, many times, even with kids who go off, if we develop healthy attachments, even afterwards, you understand? If we work on, so I work with all my clients on safe, secure, seen, and soothe. La'achar ma'isa. We choose one to work on. Which one do you think needs chizuk with your child? And we choose one, and we work on it for weeks. And then we work on another one. And guess what happens? The kids feel safer, and they want to be near you. When you work on resilience with children, even with trauma, even learning trauma or sexual trauma, kids can recover. Kids can recover because they want to be near you. They want to be in your sukkah. They want to be at your Pesach Seder. They fantasize and believe I could be with my family at your Seder. I see you as a person. I would want my children to have grandparents like you. And so they subtly and slowly make the moves to come back to us. Even when they've been abused. Even when they've been traumatized. When we work on safe, secure, seen, and soothed. It is both preventive and it is reparative. It helps them come back. These are the yesodis of what we need to do in this day and age. We have to put our relationship under all circumstances first, because it is our relationship that provides the continuity of their relationship with Yadus and their relationship with themselves. It's the relationship that counts. If we can do these methods, we create resilience. And if we can do this, we have every chance to help them when the midosav v'karesav, as Rashi says, occur in their lives, we can help them best. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this is understandable. And together, I hope we can help Doire Doiris of wonderful children. Thank you.